Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you another project I have done just yesterday. This project actually was inspired by some discussions in the online social media platform. I saw that some of the economists have been discussing about the US job market, labor market, because labor market movement is one of the important factors that influence our macroeconomic situation and could potentially impact or can influence the central bank's decision to raise rates or lower rates. So basically, when I saw those data, I was thinking about why not find a model to calculate the implied unemployment rate. The reason I'm going to discuss about implied employment rate was because that during my finance major and also during my previous work in the financial industry, we were always curious about the intrinsic value of assets or of a company. So I just think about this parameter, unemployment rate. What if we can find a model to calculate the implied rate and compare with the actual rate? So implied rate is like intrinsic value of this parameter, and to see how this market is actually having this parameter. For example, if now the real unemployment rate is actually lower than expected. Okay, so the let's lower than expected is comparing what we expected, the expected value with actual value. But if we know that the intrinsic value means that the current economic situation would prove that such unemployment rate is adequate, any fluctuation above or down from this value would have some implications. So I suppose it's useful to discuss, but the problem is that I do not have this idea of this model, economic model, the econometrics model. So what do? Now I still get help from GPT. I'm going to show you, so this time in this video, I'm going to show you less about GPT because some of the questions is like coming back and forth, okay? So the GPT actually helped me most about several things. First is to help me understand the model I would like to explore with coding. So first of all, I'm asking, what is the traditional economic model which will incorporate the employment rate? Okay, so I want to know if this parameter would enter into any of the econometrics models. Okay, I want to find the entry point. So GPT actually give me a lot of models, right? I'm not going to go through everyone in detail. Okay, so then I asked it to choose one model to allow me to calculate the implied employment rate in the United States. Tell me which type of data should I prepare. So based on his the information he actually provided, it suggested that we should use the ADAS, aggregate demand, aggregate supply model. Okay, so actually it continued to give me all these explanations and so on. I'm going to go past it. Okay, so then I'm basing on all the answers from the GPT. From this point, I'm going to ask it to show me the calculation formula because we might have some series. For example, when demand is oversupply of a product, the price would have the price of the product would likely to rise. So we know that kind of intuition, but we need a more concrete formula. So actually, it find me this Okun law. Actually, it will help me to calculate the implied unemployment rate. So as you can see, this formula is here. Okay, so there is a change of the unemployment rate, a constant, and a C coefficient. Okay, it also gives me a reference coefficient as number two, as 2 for United States. Of course, if you want to be prudent about this analysis, you always need to check every parameter, every formula in the academic literature and in academic books and so on. Okay, I have not done that. I'm just want to show you how I go through this analytical procedure. So then this delta y is the percentage change in the real GDP. Okay, so then it continues to give me some hint that to apply this in practice, we need current and historical unemployment rate. It makes sense, and the real GDP growth rates. And it says to me that I could get this data from which data source. Okay. Okay. Uh, at this point, I think the theoretical framework is already established. Okay. Now we need to go to the part where we get all the data. Let's take a look at the right-hand side. I have some back and forth with questions, answers with GPT. Eventually, I got some of the data. Okay, for example, like this part, I just get from the open internet source and get this data. I copy paste to GPT, and it formulates. Okay, actually sort this kind of information to give me this code. I would suggest you to always refer to the official data source. For example, like it says from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics or U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, or FRED. I think the data source from the Federal Reserve. They are all very good data resource. The problem is that you need to download each of the data sets, or you build an active API to fetch that data for your analysis. So I just want to make it quick. I copy some of the available data from different sources, and I create a different data frame. For example, like this one, I actually created the real GDP. This is real GDP growth rate. Okay, this is the data I get, and also formulate in this way. And then there is a potential GDP. Of course, it was in value term. Then I change it to percentage term on later stage. This is the second part of it because it's a very long data frame. I copied it twice. Then I use the part 1 to merge with this part 2. Okay, and then change it to, I think this is a percentage change. Let me see. Yeah, until here. Yeah, this is actually the percentage change. So let's continue. Until here, this is the unemployment rate. The methodology is the same. I copy some of the open source data, put it in GPT, and GPT formulate this part of the code for me. So actually, I do not need to upload this CSV, analyze, open the CSV or Excel. I just copy this text file from the internet and to GPT. GPT will formalize to me. I think I have, yeah, like this. I said create, this is one of the example, create a real GDP in Python. I got this plain text, okay? It actually created this data frame code for me. This is sometimes when I want to test something very quickly, I do not want to manipulate too many data source, too many data file, or different type of files. I use this way. Text to code, code to local environment. Okay, so then I have all these data. Now I need to try to merge the data together. Okay, so this part Usually, if you do not want to intervene the GPT, you want to write by yourself, it is totally fine. I think sometimes it might be more efficient because when you merge the data sets, okay, in GPT, sometimes it will have many errors. Like sometimes you have a different array length or array format, okay, it will have an error. I will not show you all the error, but usually you will meet them. And especially here, the potential GDP, actually the dataset has extended to 2030 and so on. So for the other historical data, they all ended at March of 2024. So the mismatch is obvious. And the data type, how you organize the different data frame, have you put the year, month, and the day format for the date? Have you actually make sure that all the date formats are the same? There are many details that you need to take care of. So my suggestion is that if you want to debug using the GPT, you always pay attention. You need to understand the structure of your data, just to avoid too many back and forth. Okay. So this is let me see this data. I'm merging some of the data. Real GDP growth rate, potential GPT growth rate, and this is unemployment rate. Okay. So let's continue. So I have done some, let's say, retry of the code. So you see this part, we have some repetition because the merge part is actually uh, uh, more or less some repetition here. But in this step, what I wanted to do is to see this chart, to see a dynamic chart. Of course, usually GPT, no matter is 4 or 3.5, most of the time it will not give you the most direct answer to the dynamic chart. You need to talk with it, understand, and change. Okay. Based on the previous experience, if you already saw my previous video, that you already know which package you could focus on. You can feed that information in your next prompt, so it can actually give you a dynamic chart. Okay, so basically, I want to see the data sets in a dynamic chart. This does not give me that, but now I can see some fluctuation of the real GDP growth rate, but the potential GDP growth rate is actually not as I expected, right? So I think maybe there is some problem also with my data. So let's continue. So this part we have some repetition. Like I said, whenever you ask GPT to actually to improve your code, sometimes it will based on your old code and change something and give you everything. So when you run it, always pay attention. Did it change your data frame structure and so on? Okay. So at this point, what I focus is to see this dynamic chart. I think now we're okay, we see it. Okay, so we have the potential GDP here, the real GDP here, unemployment rate here. Okay, every data is here. Okay, so at this point, I want to tell you that I was using the full GPT-4 model. However, whenever it had some serious problem about the data structure and so on, so I could not reconcile, could not find the solution. So at this moment, I actually copy all of the Okun law formula here and to feed it to GPT 3.5 to speed up the process. Because I know from this point on, according to my experience, I think when you want to faster debug and so on, if I'm stuck in GPT-4, it's better that I change to 3.5 to get quicker response. So just want to share with you that from this step, I also go back to the data frame, original data frame. I change it several times to get the result you see now. Okay, but I would like to save your time and do not go over it again. Okay, so let's go on. So this part, actually, I'm going to apply this Okun law to actually calculate the data. Okay, so there are some warning messages at this moment I ignored. Okay, if you are interested, you can see what it means and what is the implication. But for now, I see the dynamic chart very good, and I can see what the data I want, what data I do not want, and there is a potential GDP growth rate is missing. So there must be some problem here. I keep on asking it. So it actually did some modification. Okay, help me check the data, check all the code, and let's see what it gives. Okay, at this point, I have this potential GDP growth rate shown here. Okay, um, to be honest, at this moment, the percentage change of the potential GDP, the potential GDP rate, I need to check the data. But at this moment, I did not rigorously check it. So at this moment, I only get what the GPT calculated this data and put here. Okay, using the code to get the dynamic chart, and also the system actually gave me this implied unemployment rate. So one thing I think it makes sense is that you see I have the time from 2022 March to now. Sometimes the implied unemployment rate would be below the real unemployment rate. Sometimes it would be higher. I would say this kind of makes sense because if you actually saw the economic news recently, some of the wordings that the channels they will use is that the Fed see the job market, the unemployment rate is not as they expected. So I guess they were using some of the models to predict, okay, to predict the unemployment rate, and also unemployment rate. They would expect that when they raise the interest rate, the economy has a higher cost of funding. So actually, people would spend less, and after all kind of interactions, job market should be going down. So the unemployment rate should rise, but unemployment rate are stable for the recent months. If you see some of the news, it's very counterintuitive. Okay, now US is still in the high rate range. Um, the Fed is considering to lower the rate when they see the job market is deteriorating. Okay, so they need to lower the rate and to boost the economy. So there are some of the common sense and some of the economic theories here. If you are interested, you can dig into it. Okay, so at this moment, I think this project gets some of the initial step. Okay, like I said, if you want to be more rigorous, please go back to check the economic foundation for the Okun's law. Does Okun's law make sense, right? Then check the historical data, economic data, and so on. Okay, and to see if the fluctuation and so on actually match the real situation. But it is not an easy job. You need to see many data sets, you need to see many reports, right? But I mean, at this moment, I think we only need to do some adjustments and to perfect this model. And I think this model would be useful. For example, if this implied unemployment rate, you can already calculate it using some of the historical data and some forward-looking data. You can make predictions. And because the implied unemployment rate, I think this model is oversimplified. Okay, my intuition tells me that it is oversimplified. So maybe you can also incorporate some advanced models like a long short-term memory, like a neural network. I have not done it yet, but I think this is a starting point. In the next step, if I find some ways to improve this model, I'm going to also share with you. Okay, so basically, after all this coding, merging the data frame, calculation, and so on, yeah, and you can see here is applying the Okun's law to estimate the unemployment rate. It uses the implied unemployment rate equals the real unemployment rate, okay, plus the C parameter, let me enlarge it, times the real GDP minus K. And there are some assumptions. Both are 2.0, both coefficients, and also the normal rate of growth of the labor force, plus normal rate of increase in labor productivity. Okay, so let's go on. Yeah, you can also check the merged data frame. I just want you to know that some of the data is quarterly data, so monthly data is not available. Okay, so to actually clean up this data set is also very crucial. Okay, you can either clean it or let the graph do its job. I think both ways are fine. To further add additional data frame to this visualization, I added the hourly rate data. So I think the hourly rate data, how much payments the workers can get for an hour. I think it's also a very important indication, because when you see if the unemployment rate does not change, but the hourly the hourly rate is dropping, so I guess some of the macroeconomic data will change like differently. Yeah, because actually if you have less payment in the workforce, it will transfer to the final product has lower impact to the cost of the final product. So the inflation actually will not increase too much. It does not change too much. Okay, I don't know if it makes sense, but if you want to see the different theory, you can dig into it. Okay, now I just think this data set is interesting and useful. I put it here. Okay, then I merge it um, with this the existing data. Of course, because the hourly rate is using a different matrix, I'm putting it on the right hand side. Okay, and of course you can always check and merge the data frame. Okay, this project actually stops here. So, what can we use this visualization? Actually, I think first of all, the dynamic view to check all the macroeconomic data would give you some intuition about the current US economy. Because, for example, like the real GDP growth rate, I would say it's quite stable on the 2.5 to 5% range. And we can see the unemployment rate. Okay, unemployment rate is quite stable, right? And the implied employment rate actually should be much higher. I would say that if my assumptions are correct or close to reality, it means that now maybe the central bank, they are using this model to calculate the unemployment rate. This is their expectation. The reality is constantly uh, contradicting their expectation. Okay, except like July 2023, actually expectation and uh, reality are very close. Okay, we can get some of the initial conclusion like this. Okay, so just what I have just showed you, that this is one of the way to actually explore an idea and visualize it okay, and also do some calculation with the help of GPT and also the Python code. Okay, so just to summarize, first of all, I get an idea. I ask GPT to help me find a reasonable theoretical framework. Then I go to find the data, structure it with GPT, and put back the structured data into local environment to visualize it dynamically, and eventually to use the model to calculate the implied parameter that I want to know, and to compare and to get some initial conclusion. But for sure, you need to check a reasonable reason the different data set and to understand if it really makes sense. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope this is useful for you, and see you next time. Bye bye.